After 10 hours of rigorous deliberations behind closed doors in Kaduna State demanding a 6-month suspension of mining activities in the region in order to curb insecurity, we're now joined by Muhammadu Inuwa. Yahaya is the governor of Gombe State and he's also chairman Northern States Governors Forum. Good to have you, Mr. Governor, on Newsnight tonight. Well, it's interesting. A number of, resolutions came out of your two-day meeting, including Regional Security Trust Fund, calls for 6-month suspension of mining activities. How exactly do you hope that these decisions will end the spate of insecurity in the northern part of Nigeria?
Well, the issue of insecurity is really a factor that has been caused by several activities, but specifically by, religious intolerance, issues to do with vandals that are operating within the mining areas, and farmer-herders clash that has been bedeviling the region for so long, and that needs to be given proper attention, especially at this point that virtually all are coming to join as one force, trying to destroy the fabric of our states and even the federation at large. And we have to put our efforts together, and with a concerted effort, we'll be able to confront the issues and solve them. So both from the angle of mining, we believe that if the president suspends, mining and instructs that profile verification be made, we should be able to profile the mining companies and know who is operating legally or not, and establish whom and whom are operating with them, so that the security agencies will be able to monitor them effectively, and there will be, constant supervision of the mining activities, so that we reduce the operations of vandals and criminals within the mining areas.
Okay, Mr. Governor, and you specifically mentioned a time frame of 6 months. I wonder why 6 months, but there are those who say the problem and the crisis in the north is tied to deeper issues such as poor governance, poverty, lack of education. The barest minimum for the populace in the north has not been given to the people of the north. So are you prioritizing governance of the people and delivering democracy to them while you're looking at mining? And why 6 months?
I think I beg to disagree with those people who have that insinuation that governors have not been doing their best in trying to address the issues, especially of education, poverty, disease, and hunger, and also the issue of mining, as I mentioned earlier. But there has to be things that we do step by step. And we believe for mining, within 6 months, if the president approves, being an item that is strictly on the exclusive list, we'll be able to work together with the Federal Minister of Solid Minerals and also our ministries of mineral resources in the states, in order to work together and ensure that community approvals that were given, for operations are sanctioned and are those that are really having the consent of the government, so that we'll use that as a framework with which to monitor the mining activity. And that can be done in 6 months. Otherwise, we may have issues with investors. And at this point, it is the investors we need, and we need to build confidence in the investors. In fact, this is going to provide the security and the framework on which the operations, of investors will be safeguarded, and there will be a real return on their investments. We don't want to scare investors, and we don't want to scare the people that are living, especially within the mining areas and within our own states. We believe within 6 months we'll be able to do that if it is given the correct priority and the given attention. Social issues have been long-standing, and the result of neglect of over 30, 40 years is what we are reaping now. And all of us have been making efforts along so many fronts, trying to ensure that at least we overcome the challenges. And I believe individually, if you go and look at the states, you'll find that we are moving, even if sluggishly, but we are going to fast track, and we are going to do the needful by reflecting back so that we look forward and move in double locks to catch up, with the remaining parts of the country and the developed world.
Here you say that northern governors will fast-track developmental moves to, move away from the slow pace of development that the North has experienced before now. But in practical terms, let me even quote, what was ascribed to you, that we must act now or lose it. I believe that you made that statement, and I'm wondering what practical steps really will northern governors be putting in place. Let's take education, for example, which is very fundamental. 15 million out-of-school children in northern Nigeria. That's 80% of the 20 million or so out-of-school children in Nigeria. There was the 200 and how much was it again? 122 billion set aside for safe schools in Nigeria, including, of course, northern states. What practical steps, number one, are you putting in place to make schools more secure, safer for children to go to school and come back home without any fear, by their parents or even the students themselves? What practical steps are you putting in place in education, infrastructure, to ensure that life, is meaningful for northerners?
Well, you see, individual states have peculiar problems that are attached to their own states, and we, as a common body, are trying to join hands so that if, for example, in Gombe State, where I govern, we do what we specifically ascribe or assign ourselves to do, and my colleagues in the neighboring states, for example, in the northeast, Gombe is central, and we share boundary with the remaining five states. And it's only about 3-4 hours before you cross over the state, Bauchi, for example, and get to Jigawa, and eventually move out of Jigawa and hit Katsina and eventually the Niger Republic. To the north of Gombe, if you cross Yobe, you hit Niger Republic. To the east, if you cross Borno State, you hit Chad Republic. To the south, if you leave Adamawa State, you hit Cameroon Republic. So if you see the movement of people, and especially because of dislocations that we have and displacements of people who come to settle with us, naturally the numbers will compound and we have many. So if we are trying to solve the problems of what we have, and we don't profile and we don't encourage our colleagues to do in the same the states behind us that are neighboring us, and eventually even to the neighboring countries, movement of people is no control, and whatever you do can be thwarted and you cannot see the result. Because whatever you do as a state, for example, by 2019, UNICEF said that Gombe had around 550,000 out-of-school children. And I said no, they were even above that, because I knew at that point the numbers they gave were for statistics or data taken 2 years back. And there were a lot of people that went to settle in Gombe from Borno, from Yobe, from Adamawa because of the insurgency. So we made effort. 1,600 classrooms were built in Gombe. We set up model schools for Zangaya so that we take, the Almajiri and put them back to school. That is why you find the great chunk of them. So if we do that in Gombe, and by now we've recorded over 450,000, I've taken them back to school, but retaining them and encouraging a blockage by whether no others infiltrate to come and join so that they take us back, I will never get it right until we do so. So as we are doing, our neighbors are doing, if we join hands together, in a very short while, we'll be able to cover and make that gap, close up that gap, and take off all the children and take them back to school. We set up model schools in all our local governments.
Okay, Mr. Governor.
In order to take care of that.
Great, fantastic. I mean, you're speaking for your state, Gombe, and I do know when it comes to health outcomes as well, particularly in polio eradication, Gombe State is actually reducing those numbers and not recording them, which is fantastic. But as the chairman for the northern region and following this meeting that you have had, One concern in recent times with heightened insecurity is the question of negotiation with bandits and the question of state police. We still hear that in some northern states, levies are put upon the residents by terrorists, and there are other states who are negotiating with them. Today, you and your colleagues finally agreed that centralized policing can no longer deliver. But should the National Assembly pass the state police bill tomorrow, is Northern Nigeria, our state governors, ready structurally and financially to run state policing? And of course, the issue of negotiating with bandits. Are you also having that conversation?
Well, the question of negotiating with bandits is really beyond, the governors per se, because it's a national issue and security is on the exclusive list. But the governors are doing whatever possible in order to ensure that this issue of banditry is brought to control and it doesn't come up any longer. Along the way, obviously, the claim is made that governors are the chief security officers. But a situation whereby the security agencies do not take directives, and they only take directives from their own commands, governors will be left to know nothing but to wait until things are done, and by the time decisions are made, it might be too late. So having the local police, especially with the experience the North had, even before the colonial administration and subsequently through the colonial administration and post-independence days, in those days when emirs and chiefs were in charge and they were using only the traditional institution of village, district heads and emirs, there wasn't that issue, and they were using only the local police, which we call Endoka, and Dogali, which is the local palace guards. But there was effective security, even though the numbers were less then. But now, with a centralized command, hardly you can do anything. So it's not a position we are taking today. Even in our last meeting in May, we demanded that federal government looks into the issue and also takes a decision in that regard. We are only calling or emphasizing today that there is need to fast track and ensure that we do the needful. And with regards to funding or any anticipated financial implication of that, that's why we are setting up a security trust fund, and we've committed ourselves to contributing at least in the first instance 1 billion monthly until we see that we have that comfort and we are ready to confront the issue.
Thank you very much, Governor of Gombe State, Muhammadu Inuwa Yahaya, Chairman, Northern States Governors Forum. Thank you for joining us on Newsnight.